Greetings from Silicon Valley, California, and a big thank you to my hosts at Sisajournal for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. Today, I want to talk about artificial intelligence, called AI for short. I'd like to explain what it is, and equally important, what it is not. I will explain how it is likely to affect jobs and the skills that workers will need in the future. I'll also discuss some interesting ethical questions that it raises. Finally, I'll suggest some ways that this wonderful new technology may change our lives in the future. Let's get started. What really is artificial intelligence? Well, a common definition of the field is the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages. But this definition isn't very good. For one thing, we often use computers and machines to do many tasks way faster and better than a human can. We usually want to build systems that far outperform humans, not just copy what humans can do. So if artificial intelligence isn't really about making machines smart, what is it? A more useful way to think about the field is that AI is an advanced form of automation. New machines have always automated tasks that previously required human effort and attention, both physical and mental. Usually by employing very different techniques though, and they often do those tasks better than people can, faster and at lower cost. Otherwise, they wouldn't be very useful. Now in the future, artificial intelligence will help us to continue this trend, not because the machines are intelligent, but because they will be valuable tools that can free us from work and make us wealthier. Now, machines and robots already move our freight, they score our tests, they handle our billing, they plant and pick many of our crops, they trade stocks, they store and retrieve documents, and they manufacture just about everything. Now, all these are tasks that not very long ago would be regarded as requiring human effort and human intelligence. But today, we take all these machines in stride. Now, artificial intelligence is simply giving us new ways to continue this trend. When we talk about AI today, we are mostly talking about progress in what's called machine learning. What's behind the advances in machine learning is the wide availability of enormous volumes of data in electronic form. And it turns out that with enough data, you can solve a lot of problems that appear to require human intelligence. But that doesn't mean that the machines are intelligent. So, like the name artificial intelligence, machine learning is misleading because it has very little, if anything, to do with human learning. Instead, machine learning is an assortment of tools for finding subtle patterns in very large collections of data. So now that I've given you a new way to think about artificial intelligence, let's explore some of the implications of this new perspective. What is different about artificial intelligence from previous waves of automation? What sorts of new devices and applications will artificial intelligence make possible? The first is a new generation of robots that can work safely in human spaces. With a few exceptions, today's robots are confined to factories, where they perform simple, repetitive operations. The reason for this is that most of our machines can't sense their environment, and they can't adapt to changes, so they can only work in very carefully controlled settings. But using machine learning, we can now give our robots the equivalent of eyes and ears, so they can sense and interact with their surroundings, more like the way that people and animals do. These new flexible robots will be able to work in real-world environments alongside people because they can adapt to what is happening around them. Self-driving cars are just one of the early examples of these new flexible robots. Soon we're going to see flexible robots everywhere. They're going to be painting walls and buildings. They'll be cooking meals. They'll be serving food. They'll be clearing dirty dishes. They'll be making beds, washing laundry, walking dogs, laying pipe, cleaning sidewalks, fetching tools, and carrying our bags. And that's just to name a few examples. Another advance made possible by machine learning is the ability to read and understand written language, from prepared documents like newspaper articles to text messages that people send to each other. AI programs can be used, for instance, to provide automatic summaries of a document, to perform translation between languages, to answer questions, or to give advice. As an example, today there are many medical research papers published each day, so many that a doctor cannot possibly read and understand them all, even though they're easily available over the internet. So new systems are being developed that use machine learning to collect all this material from sources around the internet and then read and understand them. And then these systems help doctors to treat individual patients by bringing the most relevant information and the best treatments to the doctor's attention. Now, one area where artificial intelligence will have a major impact is to make it easier for us to use computers. In the past, people had to learn how to use computers, but now computers can interact with people in much more natural ways, for instance, by talking. Today, we can use spoken words and short phrases to control computers or retrieve information, as you know, but in the future, we may be able to have much more of a conversation back and forth, like the way that people engage with each other. Now, perhaps the most exciting advance driven by AI is what's called augmented reality. Now, that's a fancy name for eyeglasses that can display images over what you're looking at. So these systems will scan your environment and they build a local map and they track the position of your head. Now, here's an example of a demonstration of a headset that overlays special graphics on top of real objects in the room around you. You can see how the graphics integrate with the walls and they crawl over the real furniture in the room. Now, that's going to lead to a new generation of computer games that immerse you directly into the action. Now, augmented reality also has important applications to business. For instance, a worker performing maintenance may have instructions displayed directly before her eyes, instead of having to look away to consult a printed manual or to quickly view a demonstration of how to perform a task. This new technology is wonderful, but artificial intelligence will also pose novel challenges for society. The first of these is its impact on labor markets. I'm often asked how advances in AI is going to affect jobs. If you think about artificial intelligence as an advance in automation, certainly one of its biggest impacts will be on the way we work. Will we all be out of work? What sorts of jobs are at risk? And what kind of skills will be more valuable in the future? While it's tempting to think of AI systems in general, and robots in particular, as mechanical laborers competing for employment, this isn't a helpful perspective from which to understand the impact on labor markets. So the robots are coming, but not exactly for our jobs. Machines and computers don't actually perform jobs, they automate tasks. So except in extreme cases, you don't roll in a robot and show an employee to the door. That's just not the way it works. Instead, the new technology changes the nature of work. Now, you may have seen scary reports that 50% or more of today's jobs may fall to automation in the next 25 years. Now, that's likely to be correct, but it's very misleading. If you go back and look at what people did 25 years ago, you might be surprised to find that a large percentage of those jobs no longer exist. And I'm talking about jobs that, at least in the United States, employed many, many millions of people. For instance, just about every executive used to have someone to answer their phones, to type their documents, and to schedule their appointments. Now that's no longer true today. Or consider telephone switchboard operators. At its peak in the US, there were well over 1 million people doing that job. And today, there are only about 10,000 telephone operators left. So who's going to be out of a job? If your job involves a well-defined set of tasks with a clear and objective goal, then indeed your employment may be at risk. And that's because these are the sorts of tasks that tomorrow's AI-based machines will be good at. In general, such jobs tend to be transactional in nature, as opposed to social. So like drafting a contract or examining immigration documents. They often involve hand-to-eye coordination, such as laying a brick or driving a truck. But if your job involves a wide variety of tasks, or requires the ability to solve problems in a busy or changing environment, or if it requires just a social human touch, then your job is relatively safe. Such jobs, they might involve demonstrations of skill, such as performing in a dance recital or competing in a sporting contest. They may involve flexible problem solving, such as in nursing or in elder care. They often require establishing trust or expressing empathy, such as in a consultative sale. But the changing nature of work is not the only effective technology. Whether it helps workers do their jobs more efficiently, or whether it replaces them entirely, fewer people are needed to perform the same amount of work. But paradoxically, this also generates new jobs. Now that's because technological progress raises productivity, which can increase output and it can reduce costs. And as consumers pay less for goods and services, they have more and more money to spend, so they purchase more. And this creates new jobs, which increases employment. Now all this is good except for one problem. The new jobs are usually different than the old ones, so the displaced workers often lack the skills needed to fill the newly created positions. This is what economists call structural or technological unemployment. As long as these effects are gradual, the labor market can adapt gracefully. But if the changes are rapid or abrupt, significant problems can occur. Now, the new technologies of artificial intelligence are going to make it possible to automate a wide range of jobs that currently can only be done by a human. As I've explained, this doesn't mean that there won't be any jobs, but it does mean that the workers that are displaced by the AI technology may not have the job skills necessary for the new jobs. So it's a good idea to not only provide education for the young, but also to invest in vocational training for workers of all ages, and particularly for displaced workers. Now I'd like to talk about several ethical and social issues that artificial intelligence raises. One big risk posed by the use of AI is called algorithmic bias. AI programs are often used to automate decision-making based on historical data about how humans make similar decisions. While that may sound like a good idea, human decisions are often flawed or biased, or they're harmful to individuals or to groups. If, for example, bankers are more likely to approve a loan to people who live in certain neighborhoods, a program that duplicates their behavior will make the same sort of unfair decisions. Here's another example. Studies show that in certain parts of the US, judges are more likely to allow white people charged with a crime to remain free on bail while they're awaiting trial than for people of other races. In an attempt to make this process fairer and more consistent, AI researchers have developed recommendation systems to assist judges in making such decisions. Now, these systems are in wide use today across the United States. However, when researchers studied these automated systems, they discovered that the recommendations were just as biased as the human judges, because they were based on the historical data about how judges made such decisions. Often, detecting or eliminating such biases is very difficult. Another example is that many companies use automated systems to select which job applicants to invite for an interview. Now, studies show that many such systems exhibited unwanted biases, such as promoting men over women for engineering positions, or for preferring applicants who lived near a company's offices. A different challenge is that AI can be used to invade an individual's privacy, such as the use of facial recognition to track your movements or to identify individuals who there might be of interest to law enforcement officials. Particularly in authoritarian countries, such systems are widely used to clamp down on dissent or to arrest people who have the misfortune of just looking like another person who is wanted by the police. As a result of these and many other examples, both the US and the European Union have proposed sweeping new laws to regulate the use of AI systems to automate decision-making, and to restrict the use of these systems that can be used to identify and to track down individuals. Now, these laws typically require that systems meet verifiable standards, and that they must be able to explain their decision-making. New laws also give individuals the right to know what information about them was used to make a decision that affects them. Now, another challenge for the future is how we ensure that increasingly capable AI machines behave in acceptable ways as they become more integrated into our lives and begin to share our physical and our public spaces. The hard part will be to ensure that these machines respect our often unstated social conventions. So, when should a robot be permitted to stand in line for you? Can a self-driving car take a parking spot while cars with human drivers are waiting for one? So to address issues like these, we need to develop new rules for how we limit the use of these new machines. Now, where competence is at issue, we need certification standards. Before we let robotic barbers or lawyers sell services, they need to pass appropriate professional exams and safety tests, just as we have crash tests for cars. Now, none of this matters when computers operate in limited, well-defined domains. But if we want AI systems to be broadly trusted and utilized, we will need to answer these questions before we allow them to be used by the general public. Now I'd like to turn to some predictions for the future. It's very hard to know what will happen, and particularly hard to know when it will happen. But luckily for me, I'm old enough that I'm not likely to be around long enough to answer for my mistakes in this presentation. I believe that the most important long-term trend will be new classes of devices and applications that will be far more personal and useful than the ones we use today. They will enhance our connection to the people and things in our immediate environment, rather than distract us from that environment. They're going to help us navigate the real world, not draw our attention into cyberspace or take us away to fantasy worlds. Now, unlike today's devices, which require us to divert our attention and focus on them, future technology is going to be invisible and unobtrusive, except to us, of course. We will be wearing tiny wireless earphones and transparent eyeglasses, or perhaps even contact lenses directly in our eyes. Instead of interfering with our ability to talk and listen and see, as today's devices do, these new devices will improve the way we communicate and the way in which we interact with our environment. The new generation of sound interfaces, like today's devices, will provide helpful information, like driving directions, and alert you to email and text messages you may be receiving. But in addition, they can act as an electronic personal assistant that's whispering into your ears. Don't forget to take your keys with you. They're under a napkin on the lunch table. It's been 3 days since you did something nice for your wife. Your blood pressure's a little bit too high. You should take a long walk this afternoon. Now, your eyeglasses or contact lenses are going to be just as amazing. Imagine you're at a business conference, and as you approach each person, their name and affiliation pops up in your eyes as though they're wearing a large name tag. Very convenient. Soon, our devices will be teaching us to play tennis by showing us where the ball's heading and connecting us with a nearby friend who's eating lunch alone, or even giving us advice on our love life. So to sum up, I believe the future will be very bright because of artificial intelligence. In the short run, new, more flexible machines will take over routine or difficult work that's now performed by humans, and it's going to make us wealthier in the process. AI will help us to cope with the challenge of staying up to date in our increasingly digital world by helping us to find the information that's most relevant to us and assisting us to better understand what it means for our lives. And AI will expand the use of computers by making it easier for people to interact with electronic devices. But in the long run, we will see our devices not so much as productivity aids and sources of entertainment, but as trusted and indispensable personal assistants who understand our needs and look out for our personal interests and help us to navigate our social and our physical world. I believe we have some very exciting times ahead, in part because of artificial intelligence. But with these advances comes some challenges for society. Many workers may find themselves without the right skills. AI programs may make unfair decisions or perpetuate undesirable biases. And AI systems can contribute to human rights abuses and violations of personal privacy. A better understanding of artificial intelligence can only help us to navigate these interesting times and ensure that the benefits are widely spread to all people. But in the end, life is all about people. It's not about machines. And how this new technology is put to use is up to you. And I look forward to seeing all the wonderful and innovative ways that you will make use of artificial intelligence to build a better world. Thank you.